One thing you could always count on in the late 80s and early 90s was seeing Sega games on other platforms. Despite having their own hardware to support, Sega games were damn near everywhere. Nintendo's mighty NES and Famicom had Sega games. Home computers had Sega games. Handhelds had Sega games. Heck, Sega games were even on the Atari 2600. Most of these games came through licensing deals with other companies, who would then make and publish their own versions of the game. With NEC's ultra-popular PC Engine platform doing so well in Japan, it was natural for Sega games to show up there as well. 16 Sega properties would make their way to the PC Engine and PC Engine CD-ROM 2. In this episode, we are going to look at those games and see how well they translated to NEC's 8-bit monster. In late 1990, AM2's perennial air combat game Afterburner II was released on the PC Engine in Japan. NEC Avenue would do the publishing duties in a surprisingly strong adaptation of the Sega X-Board-based arcade original. You get voice samples, smooth and fast sprite movement, great color use, and it even has a few moments of decent-sounding music tracks, though much of it goes to pot overall. Since the PC Engine had no dedicated hardware for scaling sprites, this is rather impressive at nearly every level. If I had to level any harsh words at it, it would have to be the really ugly canyon stages where you attack ground targets. It sticks out painfully in an otherwise strong effort. I mean, take a look and listen to the game running on what was technically an 8-bit system. Truly incredible. Unfortunately, old Altered Beast here wouldn't fare quite so well. Released in late 1989 and again published by NEC Avenue, it would come in both HuCard and CD-ROM 2 variants. Both these games are largely the same visually, with the CD-ROM 2 version adding a few voices and music to the mix. The gameplay here is noticeably slower than the Genesis and arcade outing, and the graphics lack some of the Genesis additions like parallax scrolling. It isn't a poor game at its heart, there's just better ways to enjoy this simple arcade port. In its favor, it does have some animations that the Genesis version omits, uses large colorful sprites, and is significantly harder. The CD-ROM 2 version includes a crappy story you can listen to, and if you want to get this one on real hardware, make sure you have a System Card 1.0. Any other card usually will not allow the game to play properly after you become the werewolf. I can't hate on the HuCard version too much, but the CD-ROM 2 version is a complete waste of space. In mid-1992, NEC Avenue would publish Bonanza Brothers for the Super CD-ROM 2. You play as Robo or Mobo, two thieves trying their best to score as much loot as possible and escape within the time limit. It was never a graphical showpiece, even on the System 24-driven arcade version, but it did have some fantastic animation. Thanks to the power of the Super CD-ROM 2, much of that animation is captured here in fine form, as has the great color and detail of the backdrops and characters. Like the arcade, it's played via split screen at all times, basically making two-player co-op the preferred way to experience it. The gameplay remains smooth and responsive as well, making that co-op quite fun and giving this one some serious replay value. If you were a fan of other versions of Bonanza Brothers, this one stacks up like a champ.
Eat that!
Telnet and Lasersoft would release Columns in the first half of 1991. Not a lot to cover here, it's Columns. Match the jewels in 3 or more configurations while the drop rates get faster and faster. The colors and music aren't bad, but it lacks the additional modes other versions would have. If you find it cheap, it's worth picking up, especially if you're a fan of easy to play puzzle games. NEC Avenue would also release Fantasy Zone for the PC Engine in late 1988, and even in the US a year later on the Turbografx-16. This is of course a port of the classic System 16 arcade game. This version mimics the look of the original's ultra-colorful graphics and upbeat soundtrack fairly well. The parallax scrolling is missing, detail is dialed back, and there are a few artistic liberties here and there, but otherwise it's solid. The gameplay of Opa Opa is also intact and as fun as ever. Blow up the bases, grab the money, and buy upgrades. It's all here. I wish the music was a bit bolder, but outside of that, I highly recommend it. NEC Avenue was back again in late 1990 with another one of AM2's awesome games, Outrun. This turned out as great as one could have hoped. The bright, colorful graphics hold much of the arcade game's original detail, and while the sprites don't move as smoothly as its source material, they still maintain a strong illusion of depth and speed. The music is strong for the most part, with a little NEC weirdness here and there, but nothing that ruins the experience. The lone shitty element has to be the game's engine noise, which sounds just awful. Luckily it can be turned off easily if it bothers you. You gotta respect what was accomplished here. Outrun was not a game that was easily ported to the systems of the time, yet this one remains not just decent looking and sounding, but also quite playable. It certainly isn't difficult to find better versions of this today, but back in 1990, you could do a lot worse. Asmik would step up and bring us the early 1990 release of Power Drift. Based on the visually epic AM2 arcade game, this is a kart racer on tracks designed almost like roller coasters. The scaling has of course been dialed back incredibly, which has greatly affected the design of the tracks and the gameplay. It doesn't quite have that roller coaster feel anymore, and it's much harder to actually fall off the track than it was in the arcade. To its credit, these changes don't stop it from being a fun racing game. It remains challenging, and the tracks still have some of their original charm. The characters and vehicles are still there, but instead of picking your stage to start on, they now go in a specified order. Power Drift was an arcade game that benefited from the power of the Sega Y board, a customized sprite scaler that could throw around these types of graphics like they were nothing. I admire the hell out of these developers for even trying this game. Asmik would also do the port of Shinobi for the PC Engine and release it in late 1989. This rendition sets out to mimic the arcade version as closely as possible, including the challenge inspired by the one-hit deaths. Visually, it's very close to the source material. Sprites are large and well animated, color is different in places, but no less impressive. They even managed to put up a great soundtrack that does justice to the tunes the arcade version belted out. Hell, even the gameplay feels mostly like it should, when you are throwing ninja stars and jumping around. So this means it's a great port, right? Well, not so fast. In order for this game to be brought home on the tiny 3 megabit hue card that houses it, it underwent a number of cuts that really impact the overall quality of it. The second level from the arcade is completely cut out, the bonus levels are gone, melee attacks are removed, and there is no parallax scrolling. These changes definitely have their impact on the overall quality of this one, but there is still plenty here to enjoy. In late 1988, NEC Avenue would bring Space Harrier to the PC Engine, and then a year later to the Turbografx-16. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this one. On one hand, it's slower, easier, and less detailed than other versions of this game, but it also plays well, moves smoothly, and even manages to sound decent some of the time. The arcade's checkerboard flooring has been replaced with colored cycled stripes, which definitely impact the visual depth you have come to expect. I still like it much more than the Sega Master System and NES versions of the game, and even prefer it over the Genesis version of Space Harrier 2, but it's still a big step back from the arcade. If it had been just a touch faster, and the sprites a bit more detailed, it could have been something special. NEC Avenue would publish the arcade hit Thunderblade on the PC Engine. Let's be real here for a bit. The entire draw of the arcade version of Thunderblade was its visual presentation. It was super smooth, fast, hard as hell, and looked like $1,000,000 when it was released. The core gameplay experience was actually rather poor. It pretty much came down to vertically scrolling shoot-'em-up sections mixed in with third-person segments where you were basically running for your life 99% of the time. Take away the stunning presentation and you are left with a game that simply lacks a lot of appeal. And that's what we have here. The vertically scrolling sections look just terrible and play just as bad. The third-person elements manage to impress visually much more than the overhead stuff, but still is nowhere near the level of the arcade. This isn't a terrible version of the game overall. It's just that once you lose the graphical appeal of Thunderblade, what you are left with is something that simply isn't as exhilarating, appealing, or quite frankly, worth playing. The run, gun, and dodge shoot-'em-up Gain Ground made its way to the PC Engine Super CD-ROM 2 in late 1992, published by NEC Avenue. Now called Gain Ground SX, this is a new twist on the classic formula. Now with a zoomed-in perspective that allows each area to scroll vertically, you also get much larger sprites and an incredible soundtrack. If you have followed my channel long enough, you know I'm a big fan of this game in the arcade, and I still love what they pulled off here. Allowing the engine to scroll and have larger characters really adds to its gameplay appeal. This gameplay was always about being fast and nimble, so this new perspective really helps with dodging enemy attacks, and even setting up your own. Most of the PC Engine ports in this video are sort of middling conversions that weren't spectacular or terrible, but Gain Ground SX here is a point-blank winner. It's one of my favorite versions of this game, and holds up well today. In early 1990, Telnet and Renovation would collaborate on one of the most shockingly bad ports my eyes have ever witnessed, Golden Axe. To add insult to injury, this was brought out on the PC Engine CD-ROM 2 format. Everything about this game is complete shit. Backgrounds and sprites have none of the gorgeous color and detail from the Genesis version, much less the arcade game. The animation is sloppy and looks like something from the NES instead of the powerhouse PC Engine. Even the damn magic attacks have been butchered visually. The sound effects are put to shame by stuff from the Atari 2600 era, and are bad enough to actually detract from the experience. The cinemas they added thanks to the CD-ROM format are utterly useless, though the CD-ROM soundtrack is quite appealing at times, the game's lone positive. But where this falls down worst of all is in its horrendous gameplay. This feels nothing like Golden Axe. Hit detection is different, the speed is off, moves are missing, and even the animals you ride feel broken. This is by far the worst of the Sega ports to the PC Engine, and I'm actually shocked Sega allowed such a popular IP to be represented this way. The PC Engine would also see some love from the Wonderboy series of games. While Sega owned the names of these games, the company that developed them, Westone, owned the actual design elements. This allowed them to bring a number of games over to the PC Engine without Sega's permission, essentially only needing to change the name and a few visual elements. In early 1991, Hudson Soft would bring Wonderboy 3: The Dragon's Trap to the PC Engine and Turbografx-16. They were now known as Adventure Island in Japan and simply Dragon's Curse in the US. This one doesn't stray far from the Sega Master System version, with extremely similar visuals. The sound is okay, but it does retain the fantastic adventure gameplay. Exploring, gaining new powers, and opening new areas is all here for your enjoyment. While I would have liked it more if they had pumped up the graphics a bit, there's no denying this game's charm. Hudson Soft also published the PC Engine CD-ROM 2 version of Wonderboy 3 Monster Lair, which was simply known as Monster Lair on the Turbografx-16 in North America. This run-and-gun shoot-'em-up hybrid drops all adventure elements from the other games and is a straightforward action romp. The first part of each stage is a run-and-gun platformer where you need to collect fruit to keep your energy up, and you have a treasure trove of power-ups to dispatch your enemies. Then you switch over to a horizontal shoot 'em up that ends with a boss encounter. The Genesis version of this was quite a good game, giving the arcade version a run for its money. The PC Engine CD-ROM 2 version is even better, thanks mainly to its incredible CD-based soundtrack. Those of you turned off by the adventure elements of other games in the series should really take a look at this one. It's colorful, well animated, and sounds absolutely incredible. In a weird name change, we'd see Hudson Soft bring out Wonderboy and Monster World to the PC Engine and Turbografx Super CD-ROM 2 in mid-1994, and call it the Dynastic Hero. There would also be design changes to some of the visuals, particularly on the characters. Outside of that, this is still the same great game it always was. The side-scrolling RPG action gameplay is solid, and the adventure holds plenty of challenge and things to explore. Visually, it's every bit as stunning as the Mega Drive version, with great color and animation. Of course, the soundtrack is again top-notch thanks to the CD-ROM format, and there are some added cinemas in there too. If you own a PC Engine Super CD-ROM 2, you'll want this in your collection. Hudson Soft would also show some love to Monster Boy and Monster Land in late 1987. This one would get renamed Vickery Man World, but retains all of the cool elements from the arcade. You have RPG elements, shops, puzzles, and tons of platforming action. Its simple graphical presentation may throw you off a bit, thinking it's not worth playing, but this one has some depth worth looking into. You'll be hard-pressed to find a better arcade version from the era, and this one definitely holds up well for fans of the series. The PC Engine was a machine many gamers across the globe never really got to see in all its glory. The Turbografx-16 would crash and burn in North America quickly, and the limited European release amounted to nothing. This means it has become something of a cult system similar to the Sega Saturn, where many are just discovering its incredible Japanese library. Sega's representation on the device had its ups and downs, but overall there are some great games here to consider playing or adding to your existing collection. Don't let that 8-bit label fool you. The PC Engine was one hell of a good machine. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.